InsightAI, powered by InsightJam.
Hey, it's Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and we are back with another episode of the InsightAI podcast with our AI expert, Doug Shannon. Doug, good to see you again.
Hey, always good to see you, Doug.
Well, it's been a couple of weeks since we last spoke, and it doesn't feel like anything's happened in AI.
Yeah,
except
not at all.
except the what is it? What would you call this? The opening stanza for artificial general intelligence. I mean, is this it? Is this the beginning of the whole ball of wax that we're all talking about?
It's hard.
DeepSeek,
yeah.
right?
There is talks around like AGI and DeepSeek. I don't know if we're quite there yet. And as we see, we've heard many people talking about this, and we're kind of looking to tailor this at the end of it because we have more information than we had, a week ago. I think even Mark Andreessen said it best is, in a way said it best, but it sounds like this is like the Sputnik moment. So I think it's not a talking thing about AGI. I think it's a race. It's like the space race was with Sputnik and Russia and the United States. It's now a AI race of who can build it faster, better, stronger, and do it with less power, less compute. What are we looking at there? And that's I think is the big discussion.
A couple of questions that I have. One is, I've heard that this is open sourced, and it's my understanding that basically it is completely open sourced, and as a result, it's being scattered out amongst everyone who wants it. They can just grab it. And so is it a Sputnik moment, or is this something completely different? Is this like the invention of fire, where it's like, it's not proprietary. It's just what it is.
Yeah, I mean, Llama, and its different models from Meta has come out and has been open source for a while. That's the majority of what the world has been running on. So it is a new player in the open source space. Although open source is open source, and when you look at the details and you go through the EULAs and the trade agreements, if you look at what DeepSeek is doing and back to where it touches, it does touch actual governmental bodies of government. So is it safe? Sure. If you do open source and you install it on your own system, potentially it's safe. Doesn't mean that you need to check.
Well, the code. It's not. So your keystrokes are not ending up in potentially the Communist Chinese Party's vast array of data.
Yeah, at first glance, correct. At the fact that any open source has telemetry data that gets sent out, and the open source has new SDKs or new systems or new updates or whatnot, and so new things that may change. So does it mean that data can't get out? It means that there's still a possibility. And so, me coming from an enterprise side, as an enterprise, would I invest and purchase grab an open source product that does have ties to a government that is not in the government of the state or country I live in? Probably not. We saw what happened with TikTok, and then things happen there. So I don't want to embed something into my environment that is potentially going to get banned or get litigation or new laws or new stipulations that just causes more either risk or rifts or issues that I get taxed on or something.
Well, and I think that distinction is important, that if you're just connecting to the DeepSeek that exists as it was released, then you are connecting to servers in China. And
right. And there's one way, there's definitely one way that I saw that if you're going to do this, what you need a partner that's going to drive this forward. You need a partner that's going to manage the telemetry, that's going to manage the updates, and make sure you have that your own digital mode, which we'll talk about that in a second too, but in general, a way to verify what you're getting. And so Perplexity did a really good job with this. They said, hey, look, come by our, monthly thing. You can actually use DeepSeek. So they're taking on the responsibility of vetting what's going on, vetting where it's going. And so you have a distances or a moat between you and them and DeepSeek. So is your information going out? Well, that's up to Perplexity to then prevent and help out with. And so regular users could do that, and that would be a step in a more protected direction.
Well, and so the broader story here is that there are geopolitical factors at play. One of which is that I don't think there's any doubt about it that the United States is putting limitations on the amount of GPUs that can be purchased by other countries. And I think price specifically naming China as the largest potential AI competitor. And NVIDIA is in a bit of a spot there because, obviously their demand is unlimited, but they're unable to necessarily deliver as many as China might want. But that's the juicy part of this DeepSeek story, is that they have apparently delivered a world-class, by all accounts, top two solution for large language models and artificial intelligence and generative AI and the whole ball of wax, with a very limited amount, at least by their telling. Now, this is the other interesting element, right? They can't admit that they have as many GPUs as they may actually have have developed this, but their story is that they didn't need as many GPUs as everybody thought. And as a result, the markets reacted by dinging NVIDIA because it determined that maybe they won't have the demand that everybody thinks they'll have.
Right. And the funny thing is, the reason why we're talking about this now versus when it first came out is the hope was we would have some proof on that. And I've looked and nothing has came out. It's just they say they did with less. They say
because they can't say, because ultimately they can't say if they used the max,
right?
Because where would they have come from?
Right. And so the other side here is that, and maybe they didn't use GPUs, right? The mass majority of people out there don't know that there are other processing units. There are LPUs, and LPUs, language processing units, that one of the lead creators from Google left and made these and has done a very good job with these, but they're faster than GPUs because they're faster with large language models than a GPU is because they process language faster. So, and they do it with less energy.
Well, but they don't mention anything like that.
They don't. They don't.
They're very specifically saying it was GPUs and it was a lesser number of GPUs and it was a lesser strength of GPU.
Right. It was older architecture. A lot of the same story has been told again and again, but I haven't had where's the spec sheet? Where's the white paper on this? And that hasn't really.
So what's your sense on this? What do you think?
The sense is that, it's funny how this came out briefly right after, the United States government came out and stated that they're doing Project Stargate and that they're starting to work with NVIDIA and SAP and these other, like OpenAI and building basically.
It was like the next day.
Right.
or 2 days later.
That comes out, and then you have almost I don't want to say retaliatory, but news is very becoming that because of how fast news breaks, and people are looking. It's almost like when people release movies, you're like, well, do we do it in the summer or do we do it during Thanksgiving? When do we do that to make the most money, make the most splash? Well, everyone's watching the news because Project Stargate came out and they're talking about what that looks like, and there's news about it, and OpenAI is very much in the news because they're a part of it. And then this, boom, comes out. It's interesting because I think many countries and many people and even companies are looking at these digital moats. How do we stay ahead? And really, Project Stargate was a flag in the sand and saying, here's how we stay ahead. NVIDIA is selling just to us, just to the United States. They're not selling outbound. We're going to streamline this. We're going to build this out. We're going to build our digital moat. And also, it's really a way of looking at AI sovereignty. How does a country that is globally, looked upon, how do they stay ahead and keep the technology? How do you keep that digital renaissance happening in your backyard? You kind of throw fences down. And so it really looks like, to a sense, this is the beginning of AI sovereignty. And there's a chance that even DeepSeek and stuff like that, or whatever comes out next in China, is going to be their digital mode. And they're going to say, well, we can do it. We can do it without all that stuff. Here's our digital mode. We'll do our thing. You do your thing, kind of thing. Project
Stargate is a $500 billion, $500 billion initiative to build out what?
So they say it's essentially they want to build their own governmental AI that manages its own controls, operates independently, and then creates that digital moat, kind of like the highway system, think electrical grids, defense systems that are operated and or living under like this AI, functional AI that actually monitors and works with it all and gives feedback and whatnot. So it's an AI that kind of runs the government in a way or alongside.
There is a lot of squishiness around Stargate, right? What is it? Where's the money coming from? How are they going to have $500 billion of investment when the federal government has basically said we're not VC in that round?
Yeah. They said we're gonna use it, but we're not funding it, and so they're basically allowing and helping it get through, kind of like taking the alternative approach, like Europe is taking the very much let's build laws, let's build governance, and the United States saying let's just break things, move fast, and see what happens, but allow for that to happen so that we can ensure that we stay ahead, and that's what it seems like. It seems like it's a strategic choice.
It's again, I think the sweet irony and the shifting sands of political alliance is that I think they were all there because they need the power. Unleash the, fire all the guns at once and explode into space and the whole 9 yards. He's ready to build as much energy as the United States can muster.
In the last 4 years, the certain politics were against certain regimes and whatnot, and then you had people kind of towing the line, and then now it's changed a little bit. But business is business; like they need access to these things. They need access to electricity.
Business is business.
Correct. Bitcoin needs access to electricity. If the United States does take a stance on digital currency, how are we going to mine that? What does that look like when we have Bitcoin miners that are doing these mining and building power stations, but then they shut down those power stations at certain times of the year just to feed energy back into the electric grid to do other stuff? Well, of course we don't have enough energy. So where is that coming from? How are we doing that? Are we going to drill? Like all those things are coming up. And if we can do it shorter, faster, stronger, then let's do it.
And the Chinese are building power plants just as fast as they can, and they're not concerned at all about the environmental implications. There are 100 coal-fired power plants being built right now. There are nuclear power plants being built in China right now. They are pioneering with kind of sand platforms, the idea of making safer nuclear power.
The thorium ones we talked about previously, right? Yeah. They can build them in half the time. If they do fall out, they just dump into sand and crystallize. I was like, that's cool.
that is ultimately, I think, the investment that Stargate is looking for is not necessarily dollars into Stargate, but the infrastructure that Stargate's going to need to.
Right. And how do you get infrastructure, right? Infrastructure straight up comes from governmental, either oversight or governmental, like working with the government. And so if you have somebody in the government now you can work with and actually make changes or do things, we've already seen how the United States government has brought many different chip manufacturers out of Taiwan and brought them directly into the United States. Is that also a strategic maneuver? Like there is a world stage playing out, and it's interesting to see how technology and AI and innovation around it is spurring that change. Now, that's something people should watch and pay attention to, but it's definitely interesting to see how that's all moving and shaking.
Again, it's nice to virtue signal when you can afford to, but all of a sudden it doesn't seem like we'll ever hear another word about carbon credits or any of these other things that we were so
after the next 4 years
vociferous about. It's like I don't think anybody's going to be talking about carbon credits for the next 4 years. I think they're going to be thinking, give me all the carbon you got.
Yeah, I do want to, like, if we walk it back a little bit, so looking at sovereign AI, right? I want people to understand an aspect, because maybe everybody's not looking at it the same way, and maybe it's not sovereign AI, maybe it's something else, right? But or AI sovereignty, however you want to call it. But think about it this way: if DeepSeek wins, right? Say DeepSeek's the best ever made. Say it is, and if it is, but then some of the prompting people have done against it, and there's different cultural prompting that does not show up in their model and says I can't say certain things. Okay, but we can prompt inject and we can get it to say certain things. But if AI is going to be sovereign, it's going to be governmental owned in a sense, and it's controlling what history is dictated by that AI model, wouldn't you want your own culture and your own history represented in your own AI model, how you want it to be said, versus having someone else's that you can't ask questions to? I think that's the direct understanding of how one sovereignty versus another sovereignty is going to actually be pulled in two different countries.
I don't know, and I'm just not sophisticated enough to understand the history and the implications of open source versus not open source, but I do know that Sam Altman in the last week has come out and said, quote unquote, they've been on the wrong side of history with regard to developing a closed system. Ironically, OpenAI
is not open.
Not open.
Yeah.
and Sam and I think the takeaway for Sam Altman in DeepSeek is not necessarily what it can do. I don't think he's all that impressed. I think he knows what's coming from OpenAI, and I think he's comfortable where he is. But one thing he didn't anticipate was, because DeepSeek is open source, the enthusiasm with which the world is embracing it, which
because they can embrace it, directly touch it
because
now.
they can embrace it, and OpenAI has created this kind of moat, I think is what you're referring to,
digital moat, right?
Digital moat, and I think he thinks he got that wrong.
I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? And the other side of this is that people also don't realize, like, there's a lot of stuff in labs and behind the scenes. There's AI models that are being built now that we won't see in the next few years, because it takes time to build these things. And so the reason why OpenAI did what they did was probably because they wanted to kind of privatize it a little bit so they had more control over it, so they could kind of do what they wanted to do. Now, does their current model need to use as much compute as it does? Maybe, maybe not. We don't even know. Is the stuff in the labs much faster than what DeepSeek is? Probably, but it's still building. But if you were OpenAI, if I was OpenAI and I said, hey, I need more compute to potentially hit that next plateau or get past the plateau we're on and jump that curve, jump that ravine, well, then I'm going to ask for more compute, and I'm going to say we need more and more and more to see if I can get past that. Now, maybe they need it, maybe they don't, but we're seeing now that's kind of where the market kind of reacted. I think it's not just a matter of, if one's better than the other. I think the market reaction was, wait, do we need as much compute as Sam Altman and OpenAI is saying? And there's a chance for what we have currently and that we can all see, no.
Well, I'd like to get back to that point on the demand for GPUs, because there is a whammy effect. It's one of the principles. It's like the Moore principle, where Moore's law, where by making AI less GPU intensive, you democratize it more. More people can run it, which means the demand for GPUs goes horizontal rather than vertical against these large. And as a result, it's actually a larger demand than
because everything uses
only being bought by these large monster data centers with 5 companies.
Yeah, exactly right. So when it goes horizontal, and this is where you see, when you look at NVIDIA, when they came out and they said, like, here's our future plan, here's our pie in the sky, this is our gate, we're going for that goal. It's physical AI. Well, why are they going physical AI, right? Not everybody's going that. For everyone should know we don't have to do what they're doing, but as a company, 100% they want physical AI. Why? Because it's that horizontal push, and they know it's going to do exactly what you just described. And if we can propagate it into every single thing else, they need still more and more and more processors, because everything's going to have AI in it. So when back in the day when it had like Intel inside, it's going to be AI inside. And then even then we can talk about all the IoT devices and telemetry that's about to just take off because of that fact alone.
Well, we're going to take a break, Doug. And when we get back, I want to talk about one more sweet, sweet irony of this entire saga of DeepSeek and OpenAI and large language models. But we'll be back in a second.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today.
Well, so the final, just the one final irony of this story that certainly isn't lost on me is the undertone message that OpenAI felt like DeepSeek might have stolen more than a little bit out of them in order to build their model. And the irony of that, to me anyway, is the fact that OpenAI has been stealing everybody's copywritten data without a scintilla of guilt, and they're being sued in every direction at this point, and don't seem to care one bit.
Yeah,
I'm sure they have a monster legal team, but they are in it deep. But no pun intended. But the fact that they implied that DeepSeek may have stolen some of their AI magic
source code or yeah, a lot of it's like the black box, right? So LLMs in general are a black box of data because they don't want you understanding the weights, meaning like how much weight they put on one word versus another word or a concept and whatnot. And so those black box areas are like their secret sauce, their intellectual property. And so, 7+ months ago, they, OpenAI released it, said, hey, we're in China now. This is great. We can now do business in China. And then they literally left because of the fact that they said, we're worried about our data getting out. People seem to be trying to get in and doing massive prompt injections. And also the data that's in there, that is all the data that you explain that they stole.
Yeah, I mean, stole might be too strong a word, but I mean, they certainly took everything that wasn't locked down.
Anything that wasn't locked down, yeah. Everything in the kitchen sink, they took it and they said, "This is now."
I mean, with
the entire world,
no regard to copyright whatsoever, and hence the lawsuits. I mean, there are lawsuits flying all over the place.
Yeah, this is true. So, but yeah, so they were worried about their own data being stolen. They were worried about their weights being opened up, and they also said like, "Hey, that we don't want data going into the hands of governmental countries like China and like their government there." So then they pulled out 7 months ago, and then 7 months later, DeepSeek. So it's interesting how that occurred.
Well, and I mean, wouldn't it be obviously? I mean, is that a wild leap to think that DeepSeek did that? It's not a wild leap to me. I think they're all doing it. I mean, there's only the funny part to me of this whole AI revolution is how little data there seems to be. That we have all the data that exists, it's all done. That there's no new data. That kills me.
It's just that fast. Like, it's the fastest, and like when you look at, I mean, heck, even behind me, like that is a huge like hard drive. It's called a Bigfoot hard drive, like 3.5 inch, like it's huge. And that had like 8 megabytes on it, and that was like 1980s, late 80s. And so the fact that like literally Moore's law, like how things like now, like something as small as like a pen can hold a terabyte of information potentially. It's nuts. And so like data, yes. And this is why talk about data though, this is where we're moving into like the simulated data, and why, although supposedly everything around us has been uplifted and now is in AI, even Grok and Elon Musk is saying this, like, we got it all, now what? And so, okay, so now what? Well, now we have simulated data, and some of this you see from news stories online, and it's just the same information over and over again. This is why, like, I didn't post on DeepSeek. So, like, man, there's just so much out there. I want to wait to talk about it when it's like kind of like at the end of it to see like what else did we find out before like reporting the news. Before, like, it's just kind of crazy. So,
well, so to take the deep story deeper, just a week later after DeepSeek, OpenAI introduces deep research. And deep research, this is, the minute I saw generative AI, I immediately fast forwarded to what now appears to be deep research, which wasn't going to take long, which is effectively the ability to out expert experts just through sheer raw horsepower and
Data
data
mapping,
depth,
horsepower, yeah.
that there's no way a human can compete, or a team of humans
It'll
can
pull
compete
information.
with what's coming.
Yeah. No, you'll never find all the information, and it can find it. It can categorize it. It can see like what's pertinent, what's not. Understanding who the audience is, like it's
well, and
very
this isn't a deep research isn't one of these generative AI. I mean, it's I guess a generative AI concept, but it doesn't spit it out instantaneously. Is that how I understand it? It takes a while to kind of puzzle through things.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just came out, and so many of us are still trying to figure out like what exactly it's doing. But I think the core concept that it came out after this again is like there's stuff in the labs just waiting to come out, and they just need a reason to release it.
It's all set.
Yeah. Give me a reason to strike back and show you what we're doing behind the scenes, right? Like they just pull the trigger and like, oh, there's that one out. Even Sam Altman the other day said, oh, this new thing is out. Oh, wait, we didn't send that out yet. Sorry. And so it was like a false tweet.
And this is the sad implication for the humans is that the tech guys don't care how you feel. They don't care about the implications to your mental condition or your professional career or they don't care. They're trampling over copyright. They're trampling over human nature. And they will be trampling all of them, not just OpenAI, all of them, in order to one-up one another, because in the end, I think it's almost a game to a certain degree. I think they're driven by bravado as much as market share. They're not.
It's hard to say.
They're
right?
going to.
Like
humanity is going to be crushed. There's just no doubt about it, and humanity is going to be crushed by these tech guys.
I would say maybe not using the word crushed, but commoditized, 100%. Like we are the product. Humanity will be the product. We are going to be mined for every data ounce that we put out there in the world.
Nothing's going to be able to withstand it. I mean, you see all these union contracts that are being negotiated, right? The longshoremen or the Hollywood writers or the whatever. They're negotiating all these contracts that say you can't use AI. Or you can't use machine learning or robots or whatever it is that it's absolutely fantasy land that can be withstood, the pressure wave that's coming. The idea that longshoremen are going to have jobs into perpetuity is fantasy land. I mean, it just won't be the case. I mean, they'll just stop hiring new
jobs
ones.
That will probably be there. Yeah, you would have like a foreman or maybe one or two, if not four foremen that basically like a team of foremen that literally follow the globe, as it turns to go log into different robotic systems using drones to take visual acuity, understanding what's going on, just to make sure things are working or if it's within guidelines. But you would actually close the entire area off so there's no humans in there, so nobody gets hurt.
Well, and similarly with video generation, every week there is, it's no longer the finger problem. It's no longer the spaghetti problem's long gone, but it was the finger problem that's long gone. It's now.
I think right now I watch to see if people swallow. If I see somebody swallow, I'm like, oh, they're real.
Well, it's only been how long? And again, I saw something, I think Google just released something, if I'm not mistaken, VO or something like that just came out that absolutely blows away. And the idea that Hollywood is somehow going to not use artificial intelligence to generate video elements is
I mean, the hope there is, right? Like I think the majority of us probably that do watch like videos or something. You go through like your Netflix or whatever streaming service, you're like, man, there's nothing to watch. I've watched it all. Like, not everybody gets to do that luxury, but I hear that a lot. And so, what if Hollywood uses AI like most of us do to speed up things, to do more theory, do more pilot ideas, do more, hey, what works, when, way, shape, or how. And so they could get more things out faster. And so instead of storyboarding, you could just
but the speed up part, that's where the bodies hit the floor. right? When you talk about efficiency and speeding things up, it means we're not going to go rent a studio. We're not going to hire Best Boys and Key Grips and all the other weird titles that are in the credits. The credits are going to be, you're going to flow your credits at the end of a movie in one screen. There isn't going to be a long scroll anymore. It's going to be like 6 people and Grok, or whatever the AI that was used to do it.
So I mean, possibly. I see the movie still taking the filming as being in person, but still being sped up by the other stuff. Like it's
until they don't need it. Until they don't need it. Until this studio that is in the middle of suburban Connecticut and is developing, full length, highly desirable YouTube movies by a team of high school students with powers that compare to the largest studios on the planet, all on a laptop. And they're making money because their movies are more interesting to the target markets and more compelling. Right then and there, the $100 million star-driven special effect laden thing that is gone.
That's happening now.
It's gone.
The kids already doing this. I've been watching some groups on YouTube done it for years, but I think movies will change a little bit where you have like the movie, just like you have like IMAX versus regular movie, you have 2 different cameras. I think there's going to be like a third camera or maybe more to add different features, to do different things. Like, here's the same movie, but in VR. Here's the same movie, but you get to play first person as Indiana Jones. And then you get to do the same movements in VR and like live through that. There's a lot of, with any new innovation brings new ways to interact and inject that information or do things with it to sell it to be different markets and different venues. And movie studios, entertainment industry has access that these YouTube stars don't. And so I think that's the market. That's the vertical market. That's where it moves.
Well, again, I come back to the broader point, which is that the advances are happening now in such a ridiculously accelerated manner that the implications, I don't think we're prepared for how rapidly this is going to obliterate professional career tracks.
It's going to definitely make massive changes. And I think to the point you're making, people are going to have emotional responses. And that's what I don't think people are ready to see yet, is the fact that, with like DeepSeek comes out, people are worried about it. People have questions about it. There's not enough information. There's not enough people talking about it that really have information on it. And people have emotional reactions, which is like the market drop, right? People go, oh, well, that's a direct reaction to like this or to NVIDIA or to whatever. And then they get scared or they sell off or they do whatever they do. But it's emotional reactions because people usually tend to have emotional reactions when they don't understand something fully. And so that's a big issue that I think is not being talked about, is that we have a lot of not AI savvy people and there's concerns and people are starting to feel that push. How are we helping them?
Well, so I would argue that it's the savvy ones that are going to be the saddest people, because I think the people that are blissfully ignorant right now are, because it has really no impact on what they do for the most part. They don't. But the ones,
I don't know.
The ones that I think are going to be most stressed out, and again, I think this is one of the great ironies of this revolution, is that usually automation starts at the assembly line with the people turning the nuts and bolts and works its way up. This is going to start at the screens, at the management level, or the second tier of management level, the whatever you'd call them, the middle managers that are they're going to be obliterated. I think about it all the time. I mean, how much content could we produce if we just digitized a few people here and just start spanking out, it won't take long before, as much as I move my hands and look human, and it won't take long for that to be replicated in a avatar.
It won't, and that's again the risk. But I mean, looking at like the side of not, it's changed, but the people that may be oblivious may be okay. I think even regular people that aren't in the AI space, aren't in the same like even technology space that I'm in, and other people I know, when I ask them like, hey, today from 2 years ago, like 2 years ago you to today you, has your life changed? And then when they look at it, they go, well, actually it has. They didn't realize how much it's already changed in the environments around them. And so I do think people are being impacted. They just don't realize it yet.
Do they?
But
I mean,
it's
are they
coming to
being
that
impacted right now? That's the thing. I don't think. I don't
I
think
mean, it's not
anybody's. I don't
directly,
think
it's not hurting
anybody's
them, but it's,
being impacted, except maybe to be able to do their job a little easier. I don't think the devastation has really kicked in.
oh, it hasn't. Like they're not being impacted in a negative way. They're not being impacted like directly. It's more like affected than affected, right? So it's like happening around them, and they see that things are changing, and they're starting to see the speed of change, and that's what scares people. Is like, I'm already behind, or I don't know how to keep up, or how do I know what's good, bad, or other if there's no information? And so, like again, like we're gonna have, it's almost like we've talked about it before, like the open AIs, the Anthropics, everybody's kind of pushing and computing around humans. Well, so far they can't. Like we're still very much embedded. Humans are embedded. We're human in the loop. We provide context. Like we provide that emotional understanding. But if we get to the point where that disparity is stretched very far, well, then they win. They compute around humans. The humans are stuck back here going, hey, we're still wondering what the answer to life is, and we're still getting 42, and you're not giving us explainable AI, so I can learn and I can bridge that gap. That's the issue I see coming, is that gap is widening. We can still hop over that crack. We can still jump over that curb. We can't jump over the gorge, and it's starting to rip apart.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we get back, we'll wrap up this episode with a little bit more around what's coming.
Want more Insight Jam? Follow us on Instagram for exclusive content like a daily dose of best practices and buying advice from industry experts and leading solution providers. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel for long-form highlights from our expert panel discussions. The Solutions Review team is hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so don't miss out.
All right, Doug. Last period of our hockey game here. The topic, which has been building and is going to land like a carpet bomb over the next year, are all the agents that are being built, very specifically being built. So and so I think we are in a kind of a phased approach. One is we're going to give you tools that can help you build agents, and I think you're seeing this. And Salesforce has Agent Force, and Synergetics AI releases Agent Works, and Google just released an agent thing, and it's agents.
Well, I do think we're actually going to see even the larger companies come out with their own specialty agents. Like I wrote about this recently too, actually. So it kind of comes to mind of like where the future of this is going is Google's going to come out with their Jarvis assistant, and it's going to be straight up like, here's your assistant. It does everything for the regular human, and then they're going to mine that data. Of course, this is kind of where we talked about when we become commoditized and we become mined ourselves. Google's going to be doing that, but then at the same time, you have Microsoft mining ontologies of different markets for different companies and saying, oh, come to us. We know how the language, the verbiage, understanding goes. Our models are better because of this. And then you have, Amazon leading on the manufacturing side. You have, Meta coming out and they're saying, well, not only are we going to do geospatial understanding of LLMs or large geospatial models, they're actually building large concept models, which are going to be less tokenization, but based on ideas and concepts. So think massive categorization of data into different categories, filtered down to ideas, thoughts, and concepts, And they're actually, when you ask a question to it, it actually pulls the whole idea or concept and gives that back to you, not just guess the next word type of thing. So there's crazy stuff
Well,
coming
so
out.
I thought it was interesting. CIO.com had a recent article that was reporting on a survey from a vendor called PagerDuty, and it said that 53% of tech executives see AI agents being core to business operations in the next 2 years. 53% of tech executives, while only 29% of IT practitioners see that coming to pass. So there's it's almost 2-to-1 bullish. The higher up in the sky you go on the whatever floor that would be, the more excited people are about agents. And at a practical level, there's a lot of skepticism. And I don't know if that's a result, again, of back to our previous segment conversation around what the implications are, that the IT practitioners are potentially in the crosshairs of agents, whereas the executives are thinking, these agents are going to be our next round of hires.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a cost savings thought there. Most leaders are saying, like, hey, we can save more money if we don't do this, or if we hire this, or maybe we hire on agents and don't hire on people. A lot of companies out there now are stating that basically these are your next digital interns, these are your next digital hires. Like, you hire on an agent to do a function, a process, a role, a task. And this is very agentic driven. Agentic process is very task driven versus like the AI agents are very goal driven. And so many, there's many different variations, many different definitions of how this works. But in general, that's kind of the synopsis.
Well, and I think practically speaking, the thought that you can get silicon-based employee that never calls in sick, never needs benefits, doesn't ever look for another job, and just works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at whatever tasks need to be done by that agent. It's not a hard sell. If you have an agent that can do that and replace, you're going to sell a lot of agents. I mean, it's not a hard sell to the decision makers who will look at it and think, if this thing is 80% reasonably close, we'll buy it. And that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an issue there with businesses. Most enterprise companies have never realized, they know that people lose their job or change jobs every 2 years. But, when you actually take that data in a whole organization, you say, well, instead of 10 to 20 people moving from one place to the other like flocks of geese every 2 years, what if you had an agent that was watching that entire organization and maintained that tribal knowledge, maintained that data?
Isn't that how it's going to go? Isn't that how it's going to go? They're going to get the agent, and they're going to sit the agent in the slipstream right on the Teams account or on the system itself, and watch every keystroke, watch every movement of the mouse, watch every page served, watch every report delivered, until it knows exactly what this person does and can replicate it flawlessly. Or again, I don't even think it needs to be flawlessly. I think it just needs to be close enough, because you're only going to be paying $99 a month for this thing. And so you'll buy 10 of them and you'll be able to replace, however many people. I just don't see how that, I don't see how our intrinsic value as carbon life forms competes against this silicon replica, at least in the work environment. Again, we're not talking about falling in love. We're not talking about, bearing children. We're talking about delivering
value or actions,
reports,
Yeah. No, I mean, I see. At first, right, the first step of this is really building in that human in the loop, and the human does the thing to do the thing because it wants to do the thing. But then as it changes over, yes, I mean, we are kind of training these things as they go, and as it understands, like kind of we talked about, like the what, where, and why of the data, how it drives that, the ontology of that. Then we're going to get more into the, well, we need less people to do it, but I don't think we're completely replacing carbon-based life forms. I think what we're doing is, because the antithesis of that, like the further point is, human in the loop becomes human on the loop. Once we start to trust the AI, what's going on, what its decisions making are, knowing that threshold, is it 80%, is it 90%, and we trust it, then we say, well, the human's on the loop. And the reason why the human's still involved is someone's got to take responsibility for any of these larger actions.
No, and this is, again, going back to that original study, this is why the executives are bullish and the mainline IT workers are not so much, because I think they can say, and this goes back to our original point around, who can see it coming and who can't. The people who see it coming, in my mind, are the people who are right now in the crosshairs. The people who in their heart of hearts knows they're replaceable. That as much as they'd like to think they aren't, they are. And it's not going to be hard.
Yeah, and this is but even on the business side, this is kind of why I talk about where, businesses are technology companies, no matter what company you work for at this point, no matter what you sell, no matter what your service is, whatever product you have, doesn't matter. You're a technology first and you're a technology company, because you're going to be enabling these systems to drive it. If you're not thinking technology in mind, if you're not taking that technology first, technology understanding, you're not going to survive that way either. So the leaders are coming in and saying, we have to think technology, or at least I hope they're thinking that. And then the people are coming in and saying, we want to take a human first, but we understand technology is going to meet in the middle, but someone's going to lose, and you're defining what that looks like.
Well, it's just inevitable. Jobs will still need to be done, but the jobs that are going to get, I think we're just delusional. I think we are completely delusional if we think that there's just going to be different jobs and there's going to be just as many. There's no way, because you can replicate these things. And this is the other thing. There'll be hundreds of millions of agents. There probably are already millions of agents right now. There'll be hundreds of millions of agents doing jobs. It's like there just aren't that many jobs for the amount of agents you can create. There just won't be. Again, you can take a full-time employee's complete roles and responsibilities and put 10 different agents on it. Yes. And you would still get the job done and save massive amounts of money. And again, capitalism is undefeated. It doesn't care about your feelings. Neither do the tech guys. This is the confluence of all the bad implications of modern capitalist society that has driven us to this point of evolution as rapidly as it has. And there's that kind of that meme where if you look back on the evolution of technology in retrospect, it's this incredible long slope of progress. But if you just turn the other way and look at where we're headed, your nose is touching the ramp, because it's now a hockey stick. It's going straight to the stratosphere, and we are just not prepared for it. We don't have any perspective as to what's about to happen.
I agree, but then also, what's the commonality there, right? So when you have innovation, you have technology, and you have it's meeting curves, it's meeting intersecting points. The one thing that's a common to all that is humans, and we are worried about humans, but also humans want to do work with other humans. And so if we look at that, it's going to be companies that also, it's enabling your humans, it's emboldening them, kind of things what I talk about, right? It's like, how do you engage your employees? How do you make them do more? The fact is, if we could take one human and do the work of 100 humans, fantastic. That's still winning, while still having a human in there to be responsible, to have the integrity, to know what's going on, and to actually interact with other humans to ensure maybe downstream, it's still a sales thing, and people want that in-touch approach. There's a reason why people want their record player, not a CD player, not just hearing it on a streaming service.
Yeah, so I come
there's going to be a pendulum swing, right? Yeah.
Some of my managers that I've had over the years, as I was coming up through the ranks, and it's like there wasn't a lot of. I think you could easily. There was a lot of integrity. There was a lot of lack of integrity in some of the managers that I had. There was a lot of psychotic behavior in some of the human management that we've all had. I mean, I think we've all had crazy bosses. We've all had,
toxic environments,
bizarre toxic environments. And again, if you want to talk about one of the benefits of a silicon employee, you can bake that right in. Integrity. You can bake integrity right in. You can make it an operating system, right in the BIOS of the whole thing. That there will be a level of integrity and honesty and transparency, and yeah, a lot of the drama. I think, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with the fact that humans need to be on the loop, or I mean, or maybe I don't know what's on the loop and in the loop, but
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from that aspect, right? Like in a lot of cases, humans wouldn't need to be for most of your task stuff. But anytime, I believe, and this is probably just a perspective thing, but like if something's going to be telling me what to do or how to serve my like health or how to handle certain aspects of human issues, I would like it to be a human. And I think most people would like that as well.
well, I'm with you on that, but I also come to believe that we won't be able to tell that
that might be true too. Yeah,
we won't be able to tell because
there's a lot
it's
of
two
people that can't.
dimensional. It's all two dimensional at this point. We're not in the office anymore. People aren't in the office anymore. They're at their own peril, resisting being in the office.
Right.
And,
But there's companies that are forcing that. They're forcing people to come back in, but like maybe it's a work thing. But then, if you have these agents come in and then they can do the same work over time, they're still not there yet, but they're doing a lot of stuff now. I'm talking to a lot of people that do things.
not to be, completely cynical, but I think part of the drive to ask employees to come into work is because management doesn't believe they're actually working all that hard when they're not at work.
Well, it seems that way.
And they want to see them actually come into work and actually see them do the work inside, because they've lost their
Trust.
And some, I think, in very large parts, I think that's the concern. And
Well, they just lost visibility, so they lost control, right? And so leadership's like, hey, how do we control that? And we bring it back in.
And again, employees have been resisting that to the point where they just will straight up refuse, or they just moved further away and now they can't come into work. And if you want them to come into work, it's impossible for them to come into work. And so you're going to lose them. And that's just an untenable situation. Again, management is not going to sit around. It just can't sit around and be dictated to by employees when there is a viable alternative to replacing them. And that has always been the rub, is that employees had leverage because employees were more valuable than the cost to replace them, right? It was always more valuable to just keep them, right? To concede. Well, I mean, like it's the longshoremen. I mean, it's like, we'll just give you everything you want because we need to keep the boxes moving through Long Beach. We're not going to fight this right now. But you can't tell me that in the back of their mind, they're not saying, we're never going to let them do this to us again. That's the last time you're going to hold a gun to our heads. While you think we're never going to do that, we're doing it right now. We're out there with the task force that you don't know about, and we're researching everything we can to automate the entire port system, because we'll never let you do that to us, because that's the way management thinks. Management doesn't want to have that kind of...
I mean, maybe that's where we call it, is the fact that like maybe the large language model companies and the leaders in the space right now, they're computing around humans because they already see that this is not a lost cause or lost fight, but they see that once humans realize, like, yes, that there's a potentiality of them being replaced, either not now, but not in the middle, but definitely in the future and very soon, talking 2 to 3 years, potentially, because how things move fast. But it really depends on what companies bring this in, what companies engage this. Do they start to build out the trust mechanisms of it? And do they then trust it? Because then they can move to higher things, because they get that threshold of knowing, does it work, does it not work, and whatnot. So maybe they're right, because if they just compute around humans, well, then it'll just work ahead of time. You don't have to have that trust layer. It's just going to work. And then you get that nuanced view of it. But I think there's definitely points there, and I think there's a lot more conversation to have about this type of stuff. as we see the technology come out and as we see it get ratified in new ways and new tools and new workflow mechanisms to actually understand this, I think the next big thing we talk about is like really where we're at in agentic and where we're at with agents.
Yeah, and I know you're developing a lot of deeper thinking around that with regard to being able to go out and present at some of the events that you're going to. And so when we get back at it for our next episode, we'd love to dig in and get your deeper thoughts on that, because I think this entire year is going to be the year of agents, and I don't think the world is ever going to be the same. I think by the time we come around to this thing next year at this time, agents are going to be sweeping across corporate culture, and the implications will be far-reaching.
It would definitely be less affecting and more effecting directly because of the use case level and the direct access and the rule-based access controls. All that is coming into fruition.
Well, Doug, thanks again for being a part of it. We love doing the show. This is one of my favorite hours I get to spend in all the things I get to do. And so until next time, it's been a pleasure, and we'll talk to you in InsightAI in a couple of weeks.